This podcast was developed by the Maryland Restorative Approaches Collaborative, a partnership between the Maryland State Department of Education and the Center for Dispute Resolution at the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law to support restorative approaches across Maryland. This podcast series, Restorative Approaches, Our Stories, Our Voices, is hosted by Robin McNair. All of the podcasts are available on CDRUM's Restorative Approaches Resources website.
In this episode, Robin interviews her former 9th grade student, Alontae Elliott, who is now a teacher candidate at Bowie State University. They talk about his restorative experience as a student and how that has informed his work as an educator and mentor and advocate for young Black males.
Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of CDRUM's Restorative Approaches, Our Stories, Our Voices. I am your host, Robin McNair, and it is with tremendous joy to introduce our second guest, Mr. Alontae Elliott. I am so grateful to have him joining us this day. So, let me introduce Mr. Alontae to you all. First of all, he is a teacher candidate from the Bowie State University. He is currently in his 3rd year as a teacher candidate at Bowie State University, where he majors in history and government with a concentration in secondary education. Alontae began his career in education while a student at Dr. Henry A. Wise Junior High School. Go Pumas! Serving as the president of the Prince George's Regional Association of Student Governments. While serving as a student leader, he discovered his passion for helping students achieve. Alontae works as a leader in the Center for Research and Mentoring of Black male students and teachers, where he works with young Black male scholars to support them as they consider education as a potential career path. Alontae believes the catalyst for change is the classroom. Mr. Elliott seeks to continue to curate spaces that support the development of students as they become their fullest selves. And I must put a shameless plug in for Mr. Alontae because he is one of my former students. So as I stated earlier, it is with tremendous joy that I introduce to you Mr. Alontae Elliott. Welcome, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you. What a gorgeous and beautiful introduction.
Only the best for you. Only the best for you. So, Alontae, I know that from the time I met you as this amazing 9th grade student, you have really evolved in this work of restorative practices. And I wanted to have you on specifically to give us a student perspective and how evolving from being a student doing the work of restorative practices, how that has impacted your life today, even as you are going to be moving into the educational realm and being a mentor to other young Black males who are considering education. So just share with us your restorative journey from basically being a student to now being a restorative practices practitioner yourself as a teacher candidate.
That was quite the journey. I think like most people that you'll find, most of us encounter a restorative practice in our life way before we're ever formally introduced to it. I would define a restorative practice that I think the world does not give themselves credit for understanding as a chance. When I think about the experiences that I had as a student and the teachers in the classrooms that I felt the safest in and that I felt the fullest in, it was those teachers who gave students a chance to be people first. And that recognized that in us. Mistakes were not mistakes where they were to be disciplined, but it was an opportunity to actually build a stronger foundation for our relationship. I would say the first time I was really shown that was probably the 7th grade. In Mr. Smith's classroom. He was my history teacher. Shameless plug to the history departments everywhere across the world. And Mr. Smith had a classroom where he would allow me to go back and forth with him, an adult. It's crazy. We had these crazy discussions. And even when I would find myself leaning out of the lane, dealing with a out considerably macho man compared to myself, Mr. Smith had these ways of readjusting me. He would push me and then he would readjust me. It never felt like a, stay in your place or shush. It was just an adjustment and then continue. And that was just an iteration. And then actually coming into contact with the Robin McNair at the beautiful Dr. Henry A. Wise Junior High School located in Prince George's County. Where you're seeing it in action. And then I felt that similar feeling again, where even in Ms. McNair's class, I was never shut down or silenced. I felt safe and I was always readjusted. And then to put the terminology to it and the background to it, before you know it, you look up and in every relationship that you have from the moment that you encounter it, you fall in love with it and you make sure in your relationships that you can do just that. You're never shut down in the relationships that you hold closest. You're just readjusted. And that's pretty much how I fell in love with it all and came in contact. I think that was a nice way.
Wow. Okay. So you said that once you come in contact, or once you came in contact with restorative practices, it started to show up in your other relationships. Can you kind of elaborate on what you mean by showing up in your other relationships?
Absolutely. So as an adult now, see, I was pretty young when I first came into contact. One thing that me and my, RJP mentor always are talking about is how we use this language, especially in our day to day. And in case, again, you looked over it, Miss McNair is my mentor in this. The language that we use when describing it is so important because it's so new for so many. So it's very important that when, praising it, that you refer to it appropriately. And one thing that I've worked toward being more in my life is a restorative being. Taking an approach outside of it being just a practice and in becoming a restorative being, you embody it in every space in your life and you look forward. You look to have those relationships where you feel safe, where you feel comfortable and you feel seen. And that experience is what you fall in love with. Like I said, in Miss McNair's classroom was one of the first few times I felt safe, I felt heard, valued, and seen, and I had that relationship in Mr. Smith's class. And before you know it, I don't just want that for the couple of hours I'm in school every day. I want that from my friends, and I'm looking for it from my mom, and I want it from everybody. And that becomes my standard of relationships for the rest of your life. And it just kind of, you watch it happen in your own. I have students of my own, and watching it happen in them after getting it from me, you just listen for it. It'll come back like, I was having a bad day, Mr. Elliott, and this teacher didn't ask how I was doing. And you'll just hear little things like that that really make a difference for them. And then it just turns over.
Yeah, yeah. And you just shared, some of what you've experienced just with how you have gone into the classroom to do your practicum work, and you have been restorative with the young children that you're, in contact with. What I can say is that even in doing that as a teacher candidate, doing your practicum work, you have influenced veteran teachers. And you have had a teacher like not contact you, but be in conversation with you around, well, wow, what is that you're doing? Can you kind of share how you have been able to now become a mentor yourself in this work to a veteran educator?
Ooh, that is exciting. So shout out to my babies at Bowie High School. All of them, they all are in so many different places. I had my first batch of seniors. I'm very excited. So I had the opportunity, my first practicum. Like I said, it shows up when you really accept it fully, it kind of shows up in how you do things. And so I was working with my mentor teacher. He was amazing and wonderful with his students. And quite like myself, at the time, he was moving through it without actual application and terminology. And so we would talk, and I had these questions for him. I like to think that I am where relationship meets standards, because for some reason that there's a misunderstanding in the work outside of it, where people believe that you have to substitute expectations and standards for relationships.
Mm.
And that was a balance that my mentor teacher and I had a different opinion on. And so coming into the classroom, I came in during quarter number 3 for them, which is the middle of their school year. So they were without me for the beginning. So of course, as you could imagine, students get a pattern. They're not used to Mr. Elliott. And they, in 8 weeks, it happened very fast for them. But I came in and was like, well, I noticed we have a lot of relationships, but we're missing some components of expectations. And I'm one of the firm believers that if you don't set a bar, students won't meet it. But there's relationship that funnels that. And coming in, he gave me the space to make some changes. And before you knew it, he watched the transformation happen in the students. We gave them a bar and they worked harder to meet the bar, but they felt supported in the relationships that we have built. So it's that balance. And so the way that he practices, he's a practitioner of education. Like, he does it very differently now. And the kids would say, Mr. Elliott, you came in and it wasn't like, I didn't have to do this when you weren't here. Well, hey, we got to keep on going.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, you made a comment about, setting the bar and providing the support for young people to meet that expectations of the bar that you set. And when you mentioned that, I looked at one of your quotes that you have shared with me, where it says, "The unimaginable is only waiting to be imagined." And if you could just share how your quote, or maybe how restorative practices aligns with that quote.
That quote to me is, I'm very big on achievement. I'm very big on living or thinking beyond your measurable means. I'm really huge on that. And I'm always pushing for that. The moment that one of my students feels like they get something, I'm congratulating them, but at the same time, I'm pointing out what I think they might be needing to work towards next. But advice has no meaning or value if there is no relationship, because you have to value the source of that advice in order to value the information that you're getting. It's literally the theory of when we say, peer-to-peer interactions are oftentimes more effective for students than peer to adult, simply because the relationship is different. And it gets to a point in students' lives where they begin to value, as we all know with peer pressure, they begin to value the source of negative information or positive from their peers more than they do from adults. And so without that relationship there, those goals that I'm setting for them, those expectations that I have for them, if they don't value the source being me, if we haven't built that foundation and established that relationship being me, then none of the information that I'm giving them means anything. And so restorative practices is us setting that foundation and still applying the structure, because they can begin to trust the source. And that relationship is what builds our classroom. It's how you watch students go from you get your D coming in students. And by the time they leave, you're looking at a 3.0 baby, just in the dust. No one noticed it. But because there were no relationships, that baby didn't feel safe coming out. Or that child, my babies are grown, I can't call them babies anymore. I love y'all.
Well, Monte, you're gonna always be my baby.
I welcome it.
Yeah, well, we're almost at our time. As Maryland is moving towards, being a more restorative space for young people, and, implementing restorative approaches within our school districts, what is the one thing you would like to leave with people today about restorative practices?
Do not compromise the expectations for the relationship. Expectations are a form of being valued in themselves. That lets a student know that you care enough to push them. Again, I love to use my lived experiences, as one of my good mentors, Dr. Parker, would always say. My mama used to always say to me, I can have a friend who does the exact same thing. And I'll come home and say, well, his mama didn't do this to him. And she would say to me, I'm not his mama. And we all would hear those kind of things. And you just wonder why. Why is his bar different than my bar? My mother was telling me in a way of loving me that I value you to set your bar this high. So this is your bar. And that's the same mentality that restorative practices continuously instills, relationship through expectation.
Wow, I love that. Relationships through expectations. So powerful. Yes. All right. So I want to thank you so much for spending your precious time with me on C-Drum, Restorative Approaches, Our Stories, Our Voices. Mr. Elliott, thank you. Thank you so much just for sharing your story and your voice. And until next time, be well.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. This podcast, copyright 2023, by the Center for Dispute Resolution at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law, is licensed for sharing under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. For more information about the Creative Commons license, please visit creativecommons.org. All of the podcasts in this series are available on our Restorative Approaches Resources website, cdrum.org.